All right, as we continue our focus on election integrity in this crucial election year, there's a new report from Honest Elections that details critical reforms that, frankly, many states need to enact in order to better reinforce election integrity. As always, the ideal is to make it easier to vote while at the same time making it more difficult to cheat. Well, joining me now to discuss this report and the progress that we still need to make for election integrity is Jason Snead. He's the executive director of Honest Elections. Jason, welcome back to Washington Watch.
It's great to be back.
Well, it's always an honor to have you, and this is such a critical issue for our entire country. Always, but particularly as we're entering into another election year. And you have this new report from Honest Elections. Tell us about the details of it.
Well, this is a comprehensive breakdown of the 14 things that we think every state needs to do to make it easier to vote but harder to cheat. And as you said, that's what we always need to be aiming for. This is actually the second iteration of this report that HEP has put out, and it details everything that you would need to do if you want to improve elections for all voters. It's very detailed, and it shows you exactly how to get the job done. This being an election year, I think making sure that we have election processes that are as tight and well-functioning as they can be is an especially high priority. And that's why we wanted to put this out now as state legislatures are convening and debating some of these exact issues.
Yeah, and I think it's critical that we put all this out, and I thank you. I commend you for doing so while state legislatures are in session all across the country, giving them both an alert, an awareness, if you will, that these are issues that are essential for election integrity. And now that you're in session, this is the time to deal with it. So if you could prioritize these. I know you got a number of issues that you've brought to light, but if you could mention one or two or three that you would kind of underscore as absolute essential for legislatures across the country, what would that be?
Well, I'm actually going to talk about a couple of issues that most folks wouldn't immediately think of when they think of election integrity. We on the right have been arguing about clean voter rolls and voter ID for so long. That's what most of the time people think of. But we know what those sorts of fights and, frankly, what those policies look like. So one of the things that I've been most excited about with this report is the opportunity to highlight some of the new challenges that we're seeing come from the left to remake voting. So, for instance, the very top item in our report is that every state should ban ranked choice voting. This is an entirely different way to run an election. Instead of voting for a single person in a race, you now rank multiple candidates. You gather up all the ballots, and when you tabulate the results, you run them all through a machine. And if no one gets over 50% of the vote, you start eliminating candidates and redistributing ballots until you manufacture a phony majority. This is a new scheme that is being pushed all across the country. The left is spending tens of millions of dollars on lobbyists and consultants from the right and on ballot measure campaigns. In fact, this year alone, we could see a dozen states face ballot measures in November to bring ranked choice voting to elections in their state, which means this could be the year the left permanently changes the way Americans choose their leaders. But beyond ranked choice voting, we've got to get ahead of the new private election scheme called the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence. This is a repeat of Zuckbucks from 2020 with a new twist to get around the laws that states have put in place to ban private election funding. It's active in more than a dozen election offices in our country right now, including in places like Missouri and Arizona. We need to get ahead of that with a new round of bans to make sure that we're cutting off not just the flow of money, but the flow of liberal influence and politics into our election offices. And we also need to be looking at the influx of foreign money, which the left is addicted to, and they use particularly hundreds of millions of dollars from a Swiss billionaire named Hans-Jörg Wyss to push their political agenda, to influence American politics, and to help win ballot measure fights and even candidate races across the country. These are some of the new challenges, and it's all outlined in our report, and I hope that folks will read it to see how to stop these new incursions against election integrity.
Yeah, and before we leave, I'd like for you to share where people can go to see that report. It seems to me that the left is somehow creating a false choice, if you will, between voter participation and voter integrity, election integrity. Do you agree with that? I mean, we can have both. We can have great participation and election integrity. These are not mutually exclusive.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, if you want people to participate, the easiest way to do that is to show them that we have secure elections. That's why when Georgia passes a law that the left slams as voter suppression and Jim Crow 2.0, you actually see turnout go up and you get presidential level turnout in the early voting, despite everything that the left says. The bottom line is that people want it to be easy to vote, but they also want it to be hard to cheat. So they want accessibility and convenience, but they also want security and confidence in the results of the election. So the easiest way to get people to turn out is actually the opposite of what the left says. The left says it's all about access and voting should be so convenient it's effortless. But the public wants rules and procedures and safeguards in place that protect their vote and make sure that elections are being chosen by qualified, eligible voters so that we can trust those results.
Jason Snead with Honest Elections, how can people get their hands on the report that you have come out with?
Please find us online at honestelections.org. We're also active on X and Facebook at Honest Elections. You can get the report on any of those sites, and we'll be continuing to share some new nuggets, particularly on social media. So I hope folks will follow us there.
Fantastic. Jason Snead, thank you for keeping us up to speed on election integrity.